Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the Transportation Conference Committees. I am John Kosnick, representative from Lakeville, co-chair with Chair Cagle over there. The House just adjourned, and so we're waiting for one of our conferees. We'll be flying over here. We'll give them a hard time for being out of breath, but we're glad to get it kicked off. Senator Dibble, we will walk through the spreadsheet, and then we'll walk through the policy provisions. But first, we will just start with introductions of the conferees. Senator Carlson, if you wouldn't mind, if we could start from you and just kind of work this way, then work this way, and include the staff too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jim Carlson. I'm the state senator for District 52, which includes Eagan, Burnsville, and Mendota Heights. And this is my 17th year in the Senate, and I've been in the Transportation Committee almost every year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator John Jasinski, District 19. I've been lead on transportation right now. Was formerly the co-chair or vice chair. I've been on all 9 years that I've been here as well. I want to thank Senator Dibble for his work with the Senate. We've had a good year of committee meetings, very bipartisan, listened to bills on both sides. So once again, I want to thank Senator Dibble for that. We have a great partnership in the Senate Transportation Committee. So thank you and I enjoy being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Senator Ann Johnson Stewart. This is my first conference committee, so I'm very excited. I will be doing everything that staff tells me to do. I represent Senate District 45, which includes all of the cities that touch Lake Minnetonka and St. Bonifacius. They touch Lake Minnetonka, not St. Bonifacius. So in addition to St. Bonifacius, and I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
I'm Olivia Hitchcock-Willis. I'm the Caucus LA for the Senate DFL, just filling in for a little bit.
I'm Beth Ethier. I'm the committee administrator for the Senate Transportation Committee.
I'm Krista Boyd. I'm fiscal analyst for the Senate Transportation Committee.
Tim Greenfield, nonpartisan counsel for the Senate Transportation Committee.
And then we'll go over to Mr. Wheeler at the end.
Alex Wheeler, Committee Legislative Assistant, House DFL Caucus.
Kyle Schwab, I am the House DFL researcher.
Hello, everyone. Brad Tabke, State Representative for Shakopee 54A.
Matt Bauman, House Transportation, DFL CA.
Erin Cagle, co-chair, and represent Fridley, Hilltop, Columbia Heights, and Spring Lake Park.
Justin Brill, I'm the GOP House Transportation researcher.
Hi, I'm Cindy Wallen. I am the Committee Legislative Assistant, and I also work for Representative Kosnick.
Joe Marble, Committee Administrator for the GOP for Transportation.
Andrew Lee, House Fiscal Staff.
Matt Burris with House Research.
And then if we can go over to this table, and then we'll hit the other side.
Tom Cheetah, Senate GOP Research.
And Danny Gillis, Senate DFL Research.
So, Mr. Chair, just a little bit of housekeeping. I think badges don't work on your side, but our facilities are right out that door, so come grab my badge if you need to pop out there. So it'll be right here. Oh, there's one hanging by the door. Was that Betsy's? All right, so yeah, Betsy, I thought you lost it. So Betsy's badge is hanging by the door too, if you can just use that. Thanks.
Do you want to introduce yourself or any open
Thank
comments?
you. Sure, Mr. Chair.
He's the badge guy.
Yeah. So I'm Scott Dibble, State Senator, and Chair of the Transportation Committee in the Senate. And I'll just echo my gratitude to our lead, Senator Jasinski, as well as the entire Transportation Committee and our conferees. We really have a fun committee, and we do good work. we mix it up, but we end up with a good bill at the end of the day and really benefit from each other's conversation and debate. I've been on the Transportation Committee since I started here in the House. A lot of people don't know I'm House trained, and then came over to the Senate and toiled for a while in the field, but then became the lead and, kind of alternating being lead and chair for some period of time. So happy to be here, excited to get to work. People have been asking me, you're going to get your work done? I'm like, the bills aren't that far apart. I think we're going to get some good work done, and we're going to try to get it done quickly so we're not caught up in all the confusion that is going to come towards the end of next week. That's my hope.
I share that hope, Senator Dibble, and I learned a new term this session here, House graduates.
Oh, there.
And then the other GOP House conferee is Representative, maybe someday a senator, Representative Bjorn Olson, and he'll be joining us shortly. But I did think it was important to thank the staff here at the table, but also the behind the scenes here behind us. We wouldn't be at this point on either body without the help of the staff, nonpartisan and partisan staff. So thank you for getting us to this point. We were gonna make a joke about if you were gonna be out of breath or not. I think I can speak okay. Yeah. So pretty good timing. I appreciate the patience in getting started. We'll try to do a little bit better. We're starting on time at this time of year. We have to work with a variety of schedules. Representative Olson, we are just finishing introductions. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Representative Bjorn Olson from Fairmont, Minnesota. This is my 5th year on transportation, and so my first time on the Transportation Conference Committee. Very excited to be here.
Oh, yes, another senator.
Thank you, Chair. Doran Clark, I represent Northeast Minneapolis, Cedar Riverside, University of Minnesota, and Prospect Park, and this is I think I'm day 94.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll get some good work done. As I prepared for this, and we're gonna, just for the public to know, we're gonna go a House chair, Senate chair, the other House chair, Senate chair. So who knows how quickly, if I even get to have a gavel again, if we get done as quickly as we might hope. But as I prepared for this, I kind of thought about, transportation in general, and we talk about all the systems that I think are reflected in both bills and will continue to be reflected. And the part and the importance, sometimes we think transportation a little bit routine, but as I thought about it for myself, kind of world changing and hearing a lot about that, I remembered my first bus ride. And for me, it was a bus ride in Colombia. I was about 2 hours away from Bogota, is where I was born, and my mom died. My first bus ride was on a bus to an orphanage in Bogota. And my first airplane ride was from Bogota to Miami, Florida, and I became a U.S. citizen. And so I share that just because the work we do might seem kind of routine, roads and, bus routes and, widths of roads and some kind of stuff like that. But we should keep in mind what we're doing, and transportation allows the world to expand for people. And so it's important, the work that we're doing. We're counting numbers and all that kind of stuff. But just, I thought it was important to keep that in mind of what we're doing here. So we will start with the spreadsheet. Mr. Lee, and you guys kind of flip-flop a little bit with your Senate fiscal, and then we'll go to the policy parts. So, Mr. Lee, please start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Andrew Lee from House Fiscal Staff. So in your packets should be a legal spreadsheet that is landscape format, labeled Transportation FY 2026-2027 Budget Conference Comparison, and it is dated 5/7/2025 at 3:27 p.m. So the first appropriations are for the Department of Transportation and the Aeronautics and Airport Development Assistance. I won't go through each number, but I'll point out the change items. So there's a series of appropriation increases that are related to operating adjustments. And in this case, it's operating adjustments plus governor's rec of an amount increase. That's on line 12. And then on the Senate side on line 13 is a automated weather station at McGregor, and these are both out of the airports fund. Then for aviation support and services, there's an operating adjustment. There's an appropriation increase. The operating adjustment is out of the general fund. The appropriation increase is out of the airports fund. And there's a House item for the Duluth Airport Tower, and you can find that on line 23. Then there is a appropriation increase on line 30 for Civil Air Patrol. Then on for active transportation, the Senate has a cancellation and reappropriation for the Southeast Minnesota TMO. That is on line 36. And then you can see an appropriation amount change on the House side on line 37. And also a note of a statutory reduction that you'll see later in the spreadsheet for active transportation on line 38. Then for passenger rail, the Senate has a cancellation on line 48, a reduction of of a past appropriation for the Northern Lights Express, and then there is also a cancellation that is both on the House and Senate side at different amounts for the transit analysis in St. Cloud and Northwest Minnesota. Then there are a few reappropriations, so you see a negative number and a positive number. It's an extension of a past appropriation, and these are both related to Amtrak Chicago service. Then the House has a reduction in the tails on line 54 for passenger rail operations. The Senate has a item for the federal match for Big Sky North Coast corridor on line 55. And then there is a note of a statutory delay for property tax transfer that would have been going to, or that under current law is going to the, a passenger rail account, and under this proposal that would be delayed in the tails. Then on the top of page 2, under freight, there's an operating adjustment from the trunk highway fund, and the House has a general fund reduction on line 63. Then for state roads, there's an operating adjustment on line 71, an appropriation increase on line 72 on the Senate side, and an extension on line 73 and 74 for highways for habitat. For planning and research, there's an operating adjustment. Then there is a change item that is shared in both positions for corridor planning, and then a item for Metropolitan Planning Organization grant increase on line 38 that is shared, and a Senate item for autonomous mower research and development, and this from the Trunk Highway Fund on line 84. Then there is an extension on line 85 and 86 for I-94 land bridge planning. For program delivery, there's an operating adjustment. There's a House item for transportation project activity portal on line 93. There is a Senate item for project readiness on corridors of commerce. And then there is a, on line 95, pavement change item on the Senate side that is $10 million over the biennium. And then there's 2 extensions from the Trunk Highway Fund, one for the Upper Sioux land transfer and one for greenhouse gas mitigation MPO grants. For state road construction, there is an spending of federal authority on line 107, and then an appropriation increase on line 108, and the spending of federal dollars for Blotnick Bridge on line 109. On page 3, corridors of commerce, there are appropriation or increases to the base on line 116 for the House and the Senate. And then on the House side, there is a increase, or there's a one-time appropriation of $30 million specific to transportation economic development out of the Trunk Highway Fund. And the House also has a one-time appropriation of $50 million over the biennium for resilient pavement. Then on the Senate side, on line 131 is an increase to trunk highway debt service as a result of $100 million in additional trunk highway bond authorization on the Senate side, and then a operating adjustment for state radio communications on line 137. For local roads, there are appropriation increases as a result of HUTD fund increases that you can see on line 144. And also on the House side, there's a transfer to County State Aid Highway on line 145. For municipal state aid streets, there's the same appropriation increase as a result of highway user tax distribution changes. For local road and other items, the House has a local road and local bridge one-time appropriation on line 155 and 156, and the Senate has a one-time traffic calming appropriation, one-time empowering small communities appropriation, and then a statutory item for local government road funding gap assistance. For agency management, there's operating increases from both the general fund and the trunk highway fund on line 165 and 166. And then for building services, there is an operating adjustment and an increase on line 160, 176 and 177. For the Metropolitan Council, both the House and Senate have reductions to the transit system operations appropriation, and you can see that on line 194. And on the House side, there is a change in the tails appropriation on line 199 for special transportation services, most of which is Metro Mobility. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Boyd for public safety.
Mr. Chair and members, Department of Public Safety has a number of operating adjustments that were recommended by the governor. By and large, the House and Senate are carrying the same amounts as the governor, and I'm not going to walk through those individually. I'll just note that on the House side, the operation adjustments for the trunk highway fund are about $400,000 less in 26 and 27 than the governor or the Senate, but they are the same for general fund and special revenue and for HUTDF. So I won't mention those lines individually. So starting on line 213, under public safety support, this is an administration at DPS. There's a governor's recommendation to reduce the appropriations for agency strategy and analytics, $560,000 a year from the general fund. That's on both the House and Senate side as well. On the next page, on line 234 and 235 are appropriation reductions on the House side only to the appropriations from the general fund and the highway user tax distribution fund for state patrol patrolling highways. So that would reduce the base for those amounts to zero. Going forward, on line 237 is a governor's recommendation to increase trunk highway appropriations for state patrol recruitment and hiring. The Senate and House both have amounts in those areas that differ slightly from the governor. On the House side, the $10.365 million for an additional Trooper Academy per year is only in fiscal year 2027, but is made available until, I believe, fiscal year 29. It might be 28. And on the Senate side, it's the governor's recommendation through fiscal year 2029. However, the additional amounts for a second Trooper Academy stop in 2029. Those amounts are one time, and there is a different base of $1.67 million a year starting in fiscal year 30, and that is footnoted later in the document. Next, on line 239, there's a Senate-only provision for the purchase of State Patrol aircraft, a helicopter, and a replacement airplane, and ongoing costs for additional staffing in that area of $18.8 million in 26-27 and $680,000 ongoing in the tails, and that's from the Trunk Highway Fund. Then at the bottom of the page on line 261, there's an appropriation from the Special Revenue Fund, the Driver and Vehicle Services operating account for rulemaking authority for ignition interlock under Driver and Vehicle Services. This is on both the Senate and the House side. They're at different amounts. On the House side, it's $266,000 per biennium ongoing. The Senate has $317,000 one time. On line 262, on the Senate-only provision of 218,000 one-time for curriculum changes regarding work zone safety and the driver's license manual and exam. On the House side, on line 263 is a one-time appropriation of 11,000 for rulemaking related to loss of consciousness provisions. That language is in both the Senate and House side in the policy article, but the appropriation is only on the House side there. Similarly, on line 264, making the Circle Pines office, a DVS office, deputy office, a full-service provider. There's a 9,000 one-time appropriation on the House side only, but that language is in both the House and Senate side of the policy article. On line 265 is a House-only provision regarding modifications to driver's license revocation, and that's an ongoing amount of $382,000 a year. I will note that that amount is being carried on the Senate side currently of the Judiciary and Public Safety Omnibus for the same purpose. On page 6, line 272, the governor's recommendation for no-fee transaction reimbursement to deputies is carried at the same level on both the Senate and House side of $4.378 million each biennium. Ongoing, these are all, again, from the DVS operating account and the Special Revenue Fund. On line 273 is a Senate-only provision for public information staffing related to the electric vehicle surcharge increases of about $92,000 a year. And then on line 274 is a House-only provision. This is statutory spending related to the rental motor vehicle plates provision of ongoing about $1,000 a year. And then 275 is a Senate provision related to a governor's recommendation for requiring replacement of plates at the time of vehicle transfer. This is an open appropriation from the DVS operating account for the cost of plate production. Below, under traffic safety, on line 285 is the governor's recommendation for federal matching for planning and administration monies, and this is at the governor's rec level on both the Senate and House side of $970,000 each biennium from the Trunk Highway Fund. Line 286 is a governor's rec to reduce the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety appropriation. These are at different amounts on the Senate and House side. The House has a reduction of $2 million in the first in each biennium, and the Senate has a reduction of $1 million in each biennium from the general fund. Line 287 is a reduction of drug recognition evaluator training, and that is at the governor's level on the Senate and the House side of $6 million each biennium. Lines 288 through 291 are appropriation extensions on the Senate side only. The first is for an appropriation from fiscal year 25 of $200,000 related to a motorcycle education campaign. And the second is for an extension of the fiscal year 25 appropriation for the Advisory Council of about $2 million. And then moving, we're done with public safety, I believe. And so on the House side only, on line 312, well, this isn't the House side only. This is an appropriation for empowering small Minnesota communities. This appropriation would go to the University of Minnesota. The Senate had a similar provision at a smaller amount earlier in the spreadsheet that went directly to the university, or to MnDOT for transfer to the university. On line 315 is a House-only provision for local road wetland replacement of $10 million in the first biennium and $12.74 ongoing from the general fund for the Board of Water and Soil Resources. On line 318 is a property tax interaction. That's an open appropriation from the general fund at the Department of Revenue related to Met Council regional transit bonding, which is only carried in the House side. Lines 321 to 336 are one-time appropriations for named projects. These are House-only provisions, and the totals are on lines 338 and 339. So about $48.3 million from the general fund and $57 million from the Trunk Highway Fund one time. Moving down to transfers, on line 358, the House has that's the reduction to the active transportation account transfer from the general fund of $4 million in the first biennium and $8 million in the second biennium. And then on line 359, the House and the Senate both carry a provision in the governor's budget to delay a railroad property tax transfer to the passenger rail account, and that was supposed to start in fiscal year 28 and is now delayed until fiscal year 2030. On line 360 is a Senate-only provision for a one-time transfer from the general fund to a new local government road funding gap assistance account of $400,000. Lines 361 and 362 are House-only provisions. They are transfers from the from the general fund to the trunk highway fund of $66.6 million, and roughly the same amount to the county state aid highway fund. Then moving down to revenue, I'll go through these as briefly as possible. On lines 369 and 370 are federal funds recognized and spent out of the trunk highway fund. These are the same on both the Senate, House, and Governor side. Line 371 just shows the reduction of the revenue to the special revenue fund for that reduction of the transfer to the active transportation account for the general fund, and this is at different levels on the Governor and House side. 372 shows the reduction of revenue to the passenger rail account from delaying the property tax transfer. And lines 373 through 375 are recognition of revenue from various appropriation cancellations in fiscal year 25. That revenue is carried forward and shown, that amounts are shown as revenue in fiscal year 26. So 373 would be on the Senate side only. This is a cancellation of $185.7 million for Northern Lights Express passenger rail. 374 is a cancellation of a remaining amount from an appropriation for St. Cloud Transit Service analysis. Those are at slightly different amounts in the House and Senate. They should be the same amount, and we will reconcile that at some point. On line 375, there's a recognition of revenue from a cancellation of $45,000 for an appropriation for a Southeast Minnesota Transportation Management Organization. Those amounts are being spent earlier in the spreadsheet for a slightly different purpose, but for the same transportation management organization. Lines 376 and 377 at the top of the next page shows the shift of revenue for a temporary modification to the distribution of revenue from auto parts sales taxes. So for 28 and 29 only, a portion of the revenue will not be deposited in the highway user tax fund, but instead be deposited in the general fund, and that totals about $83.6 million over the biennium. On page 8, let's see, page 3, or on line 378 and 379 are related to electric vehicle registration surcharge changes. On the Senate side, on 378 is an increase of surcharges, and that all go into the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, an increase of about $26 million in the first biennium and $56 million ongoing. Line 379 is a House-only provision where a portion of the surcharge revenue goes to a special revenue account, in a special revenue fund account. And line 380 is a Senate-only provision. That is that transfer to the new local government road funding gap account. That's the revenue into that account. Lines 381 and 382 show the revenue into trunk highway and county state aid highway from one-time House transfers from the general fund that are about $66.6 million to each fund in the tails. Lines 383 through 388 are on the House side only. These are changes to the retail delivery fee distribution, or this is changes related to a modification of exemptions, I believe. And the lines 383 through 388 show the various revenue sources related to the percentage distribution that comes from the retail delivery fee. So that's CASA, town road account, larger cities, small cities, a food delivery support account, and then some amount directly to metro counties. Let's see, and those are ongoing reductions. And then under Department of Public Safety, lines 391 through 393 are related to the requirement to replace license plates at the time of vehicle transfer. This is a governor's rec that's picked up only on the Senate side, so that would be additional revenue to the general fund, to the DVS operating account, and to the DVS technology account. Line 394 is a loss of revenue of about $22,000 a year to the DVS operating account related to lengthening the extending the permit length for commercial learner's permit, and that is a governor's rec that's carried in the House and Senate. Line 395 is a governor's rec for online driver's license renewal carried by the House and not the Senate. That is about additional revenue, about $2 million a year to the DVS operating account. Let's see. Line 397 is the governor's rec for sorry, that's not a governor's recommendation. That is for a fee increase to the no-show fee that's currently $20. It's raised to different rates in the House and Senate bill. There's slightly different revenue, but it's roughly $340,000 a year per biennium. Per biennium. Lines 398 and 399 are House-only provisions related to modifying the revenue distribution from the blackout license plates. Currently, all of that revenue goes into the DVS operating account. The House provision would modify that so that half of that revenue would now go into the HUTDF. So that's about $4 million a year. Line 400 is a House-only provision for rental motor vehicle plates that was discussed earlier. That's an additional revenue of about $1,000 a year to the general fund, $51,000 to special revenue, I'm moving ahead. $1,000 to special revenue. And then the next couple lines are related to the motor vehicle dealer plate modifications. That's a House-only provision. That is revenue of about $1 million a year, split between general fund, special revenue, HUTDF, and Transit Assistance Fund. The last item is 405. Under DPS, that's an appropriation cancellation on the House side for the Advisory Council, and that's the recognition of the revenue in fiscal year 25 related to the fiscal year 26 related to the appropriation. Then under Department of Revenue, there's two items, 408 and 409, that are House only. These are both general fund revenues. The first is remittance of an amount every year related to the tax interactions for the Met Council regional bonding. So the income tax interactions for that are shown on line 409 of about $450,000 to $500,000 a year. Earlier, I mentioned the property tax interactions, and the total of those would be remitted from the Met Council to the general fund. That's on line 408, so about $1.8 million in the first biennium and $3.9 ongoing. Lines 412 through 415 are just a summary of the HUTDF changes and shows how that increases the revenues to trunk highway, county state aid, and municipal state aid. And then on page 9, there's just a summary of the general fund showing how the House and Senate both meet their targets. As you can see in the boxes under the spreadsheet, both targets have been met. The House had a general fund target of 0 in each biennium related to base, and the Senate had a reduction target of $226.99 million in 26-27 and $132.382 million in 28-29. And I will just point out the footnotes relate to earlier provisions in the bill or in the spreadsheet. I will just point out on note 8 that those are not shown in the spreadsheet, that at the ends of Article 1 in the Senate and House side, there are allocations of the existing regional metro sales tax revenues. On the Senate side, there's a $9 million grant to the University of Minnesota for bridge improvements, $1.4 million for TMOs in the metro, and a $250 million loan to MnDOT for construction coordination. And on the House side, there's a $9 million grant to university for those bridge improvements.
Mr. Burris, thank you both. Mr. Burris, if you want to, he'll start.
Mr. Chair and members, I'll be walking through or starting off the walkthrough of the policy and finance language. First, just to orient and provide a refresher for members of the committee, there are a couple items that should be in your packet or posted. The first is a side-by-side document that's produced by the revisor's office, and that is titled Transportation at the top, and in the bottom right, revisor full text side-by-side, just so that committee members kind of have a reminder on that. The language in that reflects both the House and Senate positions, and the left side of the side-by-side for this conference committee is the House language. The right side is the Senate language. The House language is organized just in order of the bill. There are some locations in the Senate language where the order is revised and moved around so that similar provisions are lined up with each other in the side-by-side language. So there are a couple of spots where the section numbering or even paragraphs in some cases are in a different spot than the natural order of the bill, just so that members are aware of that. The other item in members' packet is a comparison summary document. This is a review at a fairly high level that summarizes the provisions in and provides a brief introductory comparison of the House and Senate positions It's titled Transportation Finance Conference Committee Comparison Summary of House File 2438, Senate File 2082, and I'll be working through that comparison summary document. So Article 1 of both the House and Senate contains the appropriations. I won't go into much detail because that's what is expressed in the spreadsheet. The first few sections for both House and Senate provide or set out the budget and appropriations for the various departments and agencies. And then there are a couple of other sections following that that are additional appropriations, as well as a series of transfers, cancellations, and extensions. So that roughly is Article 1. A number of these things were already touched on in the spreadsheet walkthrough. Just to note that the allocation requirements that are put in the note in the spreadsheet are found at the bottom of page 3. That's House Section 17, Senate Section 16. That relates to funding for the Washington Avenue Bridge. And then the other allocation requirement is found on page 4 of the comparison summary. And this is a Senate-only provision, Senate Section 17, which is allocation requirements for a couple of transportation management organizations. And then also on page 4, there's a Senate-only provision that authorizes and appropriates roughly $100 million in trunk highway bonds for state road construction, and that is Senate Article 2. Moving then to other finance and policy provisions, also on page 4, these provisions are found in House Article 2, Senate Article 3. Both House and Senate have a couple of modifications to the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety. There are some differences in some of the aspects of the changes in powers and duties and grant making and direction, as well as effective date between the House and Senate. And then Senate has a Senate-only provision. It's Section 3, and it goes along with another section later on, Section 50. The Section 3 is a conforming change related to a data practices cross-reference, and this relates to authority around head covering headwear for photographs as part of a photograph for a driver's license or identification card. At the bottom of page 4, Section 4 is also a Senate-only provision, and this sets a maximum reserve requirement for funds in the Greater Minnesota Transit Account. Moving then to page 5, there's another Senate-only provision that's Senate Section 5. This modifies the definition of all-terrain vehicles, changing some of the characteristics for what counts or what is classified as an ATV. And then House Section 3, Senate Section 6, both establish a Empowering Small Communities, Small Minnesota Communities program. There are some technical differences in implementation, but the substantive language is substantially the same between House and Senate in creating the program, identifying direction on the nature of the partnerships between the University of Minnesota and some smaller political subdivisions in designing projects and providing assistance in the design process. And then Section 7 is a Senate-only provision that changes requirements around a business liaison for some construction transportation projects where there are substantial business impacts. And this includes broadening the kind of information and resources that the liaison is directed to provide to business entities. And then Senate Section 8 also relates to construction impacts. This establishes a local business construction impacts assistance program and provides direction both to the Department of Transportation and the Metropolitan Council with respect to transitway projects to provide some assistance to impacted businesses in some circumstances. And then Sections 10 and 65 are connected to each other as another Senate-only provision that would direct reallocation of Department of Transportation efficiency savings to be used or be dedicated towards the Corridors of Commerce program. At the bottom of page 5, House Section 4, Senate Section 11 are the same language and relate to a statutory route designation that is being revised. This is in conjunction with a turnback of changing route jurisdiction of a trunk highway. Moving then to page 6, Senate Section 12 establishes a Officer Jason B. Meyer Memorial Highway, and then another memorial bridge is established in Section 13. And then Section 14 establishes some purpose and need statement establishment requirements. This is also a Senate-only provision, and it sets out some of the some process-related requirements on the purpose and need establishment and scoping activities as part of the initial stages of project development and environmental analysis and review. And then Section 5 on the House side is a conforming change. So this is a technical change that relates to a transportation projects portal that has a couple of other sections later on in the article. House Section 6 is also a House-only provision, and this has involves the greenhouse gas mitigation or assessment and mitigation program. The change involves a halt and delay in implementation of the program requirements. And then I do have a correction just to note on the next provision. Section 7 actually goes along with a different section that is involved with the transportation impact and assessment mitigation account. So this section, Section 8, is a House-only provision that provides for a sweep of excess funds in the account. And then Section 7 goes along with something a little bit later in the article. Moving then to page 7, a series of Senate-only sections, 15 to 22, and I'll note that there's also a repealer that goes along with this. These provisions modify requirements around county state aid and municipal state aid design requirements. This includes establishing a design guide usage as the basis for design on state aid projects, modifying and setting out considerations for when there are changes against the design, codification of the variance process, an advisory committee around variances, and then elimination of the corresponding rulemaking authority. And then Senate Section 23 is a Senate-only provision. This was mentioned earlier in the spreadsheet walkthrough. This is the language that establishes the local government road funding gap assistance account and identifies the uses of funds as well as who the recipients of funds are from money that's available in the account. And then a couple of sections on the House side, House Sections 9 and 66, set limitations on the use of investment revenue from funds that come from the state. And so it's a directive to local units of government on investment dollars being allocated only to transportation purposes. And then House Section 10 is another House-only provision. This provides some authority to the Department of Public Safety related to dealer licensing to allow treatment of dealers who are registered in a neighboring state as considered a dealer in Minnesota for some types of motor vehicle related activities. There are a couple other dealer provisions a little bit later on. House Section 11 and Senate Section 24 establish an increase in the electric vehicle surcharge, there are some differences between the House and Senate on this, including a modification in the allocation of surcharge revenue in the House language and establishment of indexing of the surcharge on the part of the Senate language. There are a couple other Senate-only provisions also related to electric vehicles. The first is Section 25, and this sets a new surcharge on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, similarly setting a surcharge and providing for indexing. And then there's a number of sections, 26 to 27, and then 33 and 35 that are Senate only. And these all relate to similar surcharges for all electric motorcycles as well as plug-in hybrid electric motorcycles. So those series of sections set out the surcharges as well as definitions for those types of vehicles. Moving then to page 8, both House and Senate have a proposal on expanding the period in which a special permit is valid to allow for a vehicle to be transported out of state. That's House sections 12 and 21, Senate sections 28 and 32. And then the blackout special plate was mentioned earlier in the spreadsheet walkthrough. This is House sections 13 and 14. I did note in reviewing this that there is an update to the comparison summary. If you're following along with that, that's actually on page R76 of the side-by-side. The next provision is House only. It's House Section 15, and this authorizes a new type of special license plate for rental motor vehicles and sets out the plate requirements, eligibility, plate design, and so forth. Also, a House-only provision is Section 16, and this relates to motor vehicle dealers. It sets out that independent contractors aren't exempted from the dealer licensing requirements. And then Section 17 is another motor vehicle dealer provision. This is House only as well, and it sets some additional qualification requirements for dealers to obtain a license and modifies or expands some of the background check requirements in conjunction with that. And then Section 18, as well as it actually is kind of connected to Section 19, relate to dealer plates. This is Section 29 in the Senate language. Both the House and Senate establish a broadening of the use of dealer plates to be able to be used as a courtesy vehicle. Then there's some additional provisions in the House language. That includes a limitation on plate issuances to dealers at a maximum cap, some plate administration authorization for a dealer association, and some modification to fees as well. And then connected to that is the House-only Section 19 that sets some similar requirements for dealers involved with sales of other types of vehicles. At the top of page 10, both the House and the Senate have reimbursement language, and this provides direction to the Department of Public Safety to provide reimbursements on some types of transactions to both deputy registrars as well as driver's license agents in specified amounts based on the nature of the transaction. And then Section 31 is a Senate-only provision. This was mentioned earlier. It's the removal of plates and obtaining of new plates requirements when there's a change in ownership of a motor vehicle. Section 22 is a House-only provision. And this sets out a process requirements for an insurer that has obtained a vehicle through an insurance claim payment to be able to obtain a title on that vehicle. And somewhat related to that, Section 23 is also House-only and lays out a process and requirements for salvage vehicle auction companies to go through a titling process to obtain a title on the vehicle. The following sections, 24 through 26, relate to the retail delivery fee and set out both a definition and, in the substantive language, some exemptions from the delivery fee. This is for delivery following some sales involving liquefied natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, and road construction materials. Moving then to page 10, there is another correction. This is Senate Section 34, and it's House Section 27. And both the House and Senate have the same substantive language. There's a difference in the effective date. And this is a modification to the definition of intersection that relates to divided highways. And then the next provision is found in both House and Senate language in part. So a piece of it just has a technical difference between the House and Senate, which is on a clarification of the meaning of traffic regulations involving flashing yellow arrows. There's also a piece in that same section that is Senate only and is part of a series of sections that limit the authority of peace officers to issue citations to pedestrians in a couple of different circumstances. The first of those is when there's a violation of a steady red or steady yellow signal. The next of those is found in Section 37, and that's when there's a violation by the pedestrian of a don't walk signal. And then there's a third section a little bit later that's similar or related to that provision. And then Section 29 is house-only language, and it broadens the requirements for crash reporting by peace officers. And then Section 30 is also a house-only provision, and this broadens the situations in which a person's license can be revoked for speed or extreme speed. And I'll just highlight that there might be, for some, a copy of the comparison summary that references the improper revisor page. So this is found on page R93. And then at the bottom of page 10, Section 38 on the Senate side is a Senate-only provision, and this sets out a statutory speed limit on a segment of highway in the city of Medford. And then top of page 11 has another Senate-only statutory speed limit designation, and this one is in Beltrami County. And then Section 40 is the third of the pedestrian citation provisions that I had mentioned earlier, and this one is on crossing the road in some circumstances between adjacent intersections.
Mr. Chair, I will be walking through the remaining provisions on the comparison summary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the conference committee and of the members of the audience, the May 7th comparison summary, I'm picking back up on for Senate section, Article 3, Section 41. This was a section that increases the statutory fine for multiple violations of a failure to stop for a school bus stop arm. This was adopted on the Senate floor. Section 31 of the House bill on R94 of the side-by-side is a requirement to use a seatbelt for all Class 2 all-terrain vehicles when operating on a public road right-of-way. Section 34 and Section 43 of the Senate bill, Section 34 of the House bill, and Section 43 of the Senate bill both add a definition to the chapter of law governing driver's license examinations and driver's education. Section 44 of the Senate bill and Section 35 of the House bill are identical provisions coming from the governor's bill regarding the length of time a commercial driver's instruction permit is valid from 6 months to 1 year. Section 36 of the House bill authorizes the online renewal or request of a duplicate for a real ID compliant or non-compliant driver's license or identification card. This is a provision that was originally in a 2024 Senate Transportation Bill. I know new year and everything, but just wanted to highlight for the Senate members of this committee. This is a provision that is currently found in the governor's Transportation Finance Omnibus Bill as well. Section 37 of the House bill and Section 45 of the Senate bill are from the DVS policy bill that pertain to technical changes regarding evidence of a name change that's submitted for purposes of applying for documentation from DVS. This strikes that language in Section 45, and then in Section 46 of the Senate bill and Section 38 of the House bill moves it into its own subdivision. Section 47 of the Senate language on R100 of the side-by-side is the authorization to allow for certain types of filing fee sharing for a driver's license agent. Those are specified in a paragraph F in the Senate language, but in the House language, that's broken down into its own subdivision. On the side-by-side, we make I don't believe we make a reference to what recommendation we'll be making on a technical level, but from this Senate Council's perspective, breaking it out as a subdivision seems to read a little bit more clearly. On Senate Section 48 and through Senate Section 50, Senate Section 48 and Senate Section 49 are provisions relating to the authorization and the requirement to teach work zone safety as part of a driver's license examination. I'll note on Section 48 of and this kind of highlights and is tied together with Section 51 of the Senate bill, that there is a difference in the effective dates of this provision, where the driver's education provision to require to teach work zone safety is different from the adoption of the driver's manual to include those contents, which also has a different effective date for which then the work zone safety requirements are then taught as part of new driver's license examinations. So that is a high-level, slightly confusing explanation to say that the sequencing of these requirements has been worked through to ensure that the requirements are not being implemented before the contents of the curriculum or the education have been incorporated. Section 103, R103 of the side-by-side includes Senate Section 50. This was the provision that my counterpart, Matt, referenced regarding the authorization to wear a certain medical covering for purposes of your driver's license or identification photograph. Section 51 is Senate language that contains both the authorization or the requirement to teach work zone safety and related criteria, but also includes the requirement that certain road skills examinations are offered a certain percentage of time in advance. This language is picked up on the side-by-side document on page R104, beginning on Senate language 89, line 27. And then there's also a new paragraph E that institutes a residency requirement. This Senate position allows an applicant who resides in the same county of which an exam station is located to have the ability to book a road skills examination earlier than 1 month in advance. And that also applies to a resident of an adjacent county to where an exam station is located. This change is effective August 1, 2025, and as I mentioned earlier about the sequencing, the requirement that work zone safety is taught as part of a driver's license examination is effective January 1, 2027 for examinations on or after that date. Section 40 of the House bill and Section 52 of the Senate bill, as mentioned by my colleague, are the increase of the fee for failure to appear for a skills road test. Both House and Senate institute an additional fee for failing to, or who cancels a road test between 24 and 72 hours. Section 41 is a House-only provision that institutes, that modifies the definition of a road test. Section 42 and Section 53 of the Senate bill make a technical change regarding the degrees of manslaughter for purposes of a driver's license revocation. This is carried in the DVS policy bill. Section 56 of the Senate bill and Section 57 of the Senate bill are a Senate-only provision relating to the reintegration driver's license. The expiration date of the reintegration driver's license is increased from 15 to 24 months, and this applies to reintegration licenses issued on or after the date of a final enactment. Section 57 allows a 90-day period by which an expired reintegration license can be used to apply for a regular driver's license, and this captures previously issued reintegration driver's licenses in the drafting of the effective date of final enactment. Section 60 is a governor's bill proposal requiring the adoption of performance standards for ignition interlock. Section 61 is a Senate-only provision in the Senate bill that requires, not requires, but authorizes an individual to take a variety of methods of driver's education instruction so long as the method of instruction in the curriculum is identical across the singular driver education provider. So this envisions a scenario where a student may take both in-person and hybrid or in-person and line, and this is effective August 1, 2025. The Section 62, House Bill, House Section 43 is a House-only provision from the governor's bill that authorizes the Commissioner of Transportation to provide grants or financial assistance to meet the state's climate emissions goals. Senate-only provisions, Section 62, is a provision that requires, upon further revisions of the State Highway Investment Plan, a comprehensive analysis of previous year's projects and how, whether they've met certain milestones and timelines, and in terms of identifying links between the implementation and whether the plan has met, the requirement has met those ambitions. Section 44 is a House-only provision that strikes a reporting requirement related to other consolidated transportation reporting requirements. Section 45 of the House bill and Section 63 of the Senate bill institute asset sustainability ratio targets. There is a considerable policy difference between the House and Senate positions. The Senate delays the implementation of the calculation of these ratio targets until fiscal year 2030 and implements a later schedule as a result, whereas the House takes a more specific approach to trunk highway system lane miles and still requires the implementation effective August 1, 2025. Section 46 of the House bill is a House-only provision that institutes a comprehensive transportation project portal. The language of the portal goes from on the side-by-side R109 to R112. Section 47 of the House bill institutes a required consolidated local transportation financial report. This specifies a consolidated transportation report required to be submitted by MnDOT, specifies the contents of the required financial information, and is kind of the link between the consolidation of other reports found in Article 3 of the Senate bill and Article 2 of the House bill. Of note, on R113 of the side-by-side of the House Section 47, there is some conditional withholding of certain state aid as a result of failing to submit financial information. Moving on to Section 48 of the House bill, this is, again, a kind of a consolidation technical conforming requirement as a result of the reporting. Section 49 of the House bill and Section 64 of the Senate bill institute a resilient pavement program. There's some policy differences between the House and Senate, as well as some appropriation differences found in Article 1. The Senate appropriation was changed on the Senate floor to be directed to an existing program within MnDOT. House Section 50 is a House-only provision relating to the act that modifies the solicitation process for active transportation solicitations. This is found in the governor's transportation bill. Section 51 is a House-only provision that institutes certain financial reporting requirements for a metropolitan county. Section 65 is a Senate-only provision, as mentioned by my counterpart, related to the Corridors of Commerce program and transportation efficiencies found within MnDOT. Section 52 is a House-only provision that strikes a significant portion of trunk highway fund reporting on major highway projects, but institutes a detailed breakdown of what is required in the subdivision 2A, and I believe, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but the stricken language is recreated as part of other contents of reports that are instituted in the draft. Close enough. Section 53 and Section 67 are Senate, are roughly similar, but have a minor policy difference between House and Senate, where the reporting requirement for the House begins in calendar year 2029. The Senate preserves the reporting requirements. Section 67 of the Senate bill is a Senate-only provision that requires multidisciplinary project development for certain major trunk highway projects. This requires kind of comprehensive core project team expertise as a result of certain projects to analyze projects and project decisions. Section 68 and Section 69 are related to Section 67 as they require the implementation of those requirements in the Complete Streets plan and implementation process at the Department of Transportation. And Section 67 through 69 are effective March 1, 2027. Section 54 and Section 70 are the electric assisted bicycle rebate modifications. There are substantial policy differences between the House and Senate provisions. First, the House provision only requires a prior year's income tax return for purposes of applying for the certificate, whereas the Senate requires proof of a disability to be eligible to apply for the credit. And there's a variety of other conforming changes related to the definition of a person with a disability within the Senate bill. I'll also note that this language is found in the recently unveiled Senate tax bill that was heard in the Senate Tax Committee as well yesterday. Both would require the use of a lottery should a certain number, should the total number of applicants exceed the money available for the program that remains from the one-time appropriation enacted in the 2023 bill, but the Senate would reserve that allocation among people who qualify rather than just the income limitation that's found within the House bill. Section 73 of the Senate bill is a Senate-only provision that modifies the statutory allocation and distribution of the auto part sales tax. This carries on the side-by-side until R127. Section 57 of the House bill is a House-only provision that relates to certain transportation reporting from Twin Cities metropolitan area counties on the use of transportation sales and use tax funds. Section 58 on the House bill on R128 of the side-by-side is a provision from the governor's bill related to administrative expenses for grant programming. Section 74 of the Senate bill and Section 75 of the Senate bill are provision related to the railroad and pipeline safety account that modifies the assessments to railroad companies and pipeline companies and modifies the statutory allocation of that appropriation. And that is a Senate-only provision that carries until R130 on the side-by-side. Section 76 of the Senate bill and Section 59 is a technical definition from the one of the MnDOT bills regarding coordinated aircraft, unmanned aircraft system fleet. There's a technical difference in the definition in terms of just how the language is written. I believe the recommendation would be to adopt House language if we're getting that far ahead. Section 60 and Section 70, Section 60 of the House bill and Section 77 of the Senate bill relate to the authorization to use electronic attestation for purposes of certain aircraft registration, which is then picked up on Section 61 of the House bill, Section 62 of the House bill, and Section 63 of the House bill, as well as Sections 78, 79, and 80 of the Senate bill. And this authorization to use electronic attestation also stems from a MnDOT policy bill. Section 81 of the Senate bill on R133 makes a technical definition change to the definition of small unmanned aircraft systems. Section 64 and Section 82 of the Senate bill is the authorization for an operator to conduct a coordinated unmanned aircraft system fleet event and specifies a daily registration fee. Section 65 of the House bill is a certain authorization to require the metropolitan county to provide certain financial information related to the consolidated financial report being enacted later in the bill. Section 83 and Section 8 of the Senate bill is the authorization for the Metropolitan Council to engage in direct contracting and engage in certain preferences that and Section 84 is part of the Metropolitan Council's consolidated transportation reporting requirements. This was an agency bill that is carried on the Senate side. This is also tied to Senate Section 65 or Senate Section 85 on R135 of the side-by-side. Section 66 of the House bill, beginning on page R136 of the side-by-side, is tied to what my counterpart described as the limitation on a use of certain investment income for certain transportation authorities. So this limits the Metropolitan Council's use of transportation investment income for non-transportation purposes. Section 86 is tied to what was previously described as the direct contracting preferences for the Metropolitan Council. That carries on until R138 of the side-by-side document. Section 87 and Section 88 are tied to the Metropolitan Council's agency financial reporting requirements and kind of technical cleanup with a variety of statutorily required reports that the Metropolitan Council is required to submit. This specifies I'll just move on to House Section 67. As mentioned in the spreadsheet walkthrough, this is the authorization for the Metropolitan Council to issue bonding for certain transit projects. Section 68 and Section 69 are certain limitations and analyses as required of that authorization of bonding for the Metropolitan Council. This is the Section 69 in particular is just a cross-reference to limit that bonding authority on light rail transit projects. Section 70 of the House bill and Section 89 is a provision from the governor's bill that is mostly identical between the bodies. The difference is in the effective date, and this authorizes the use of free fares for Metro mobility eligible riders on Metro transit routes. Section 90 is, again, related to the Senate-only provision for the agency's transportation financial technical changes to modify the cleaning and standards report to the legislature. Section 91 and sections of the Senate bill and Section 71 of the House bill on R142 of the side-by-side authorize a certain amount of a loan from the Metropolitan Council to the Department of Transportation, but there are some policy differences in terms of the use of the funds as well as the type of loan that may be authorized. This was initially introduced as part of the governor's bill. Section 72 on the House bill is part of the consolidated transportation reporting requirements. Earlier picked up. Section 73 of the House bill, as well as Section 92 of the Senate bill, is an identical provision that extends the due date of a report related to traffic safety disposition analysis. Section 93 of the Senate bill is a Senate-only provision that modifies the 2024 enactment of the authorization to lane filter or lane split on a motorcycle. The changes are reasonably substantial from what was enacted in 2024 and can be found on page R144 of the side-by-side document. The authorization to lane split during moving traffic is repealed, so the law that would then be enacted would only permit the filtering of a motorcycle to stationary traffic under certain circumstances. The term traffic lane is used to exclude certain road segment types, such as a roundabout, a work zone where only a single travel lane is present, or a school zone. So this authorization is narrower in terms of moving traffic as the statute is currently written and enacted and signed into law in 2024. And then the following section for that on R145 of the side-by-side delays the effective date, which is due to become effective on July 1 of 2025, and pushes it out a year to July 1, 2026. So long and short, lane splitting is proposed to be no more and pushes out until July 1, 2026. Senate Section 96 is the authorization for autonomous mower research and development for the Department of Transportation. This carries until page R147 of the side-by-side. The next section is direction to the Department of Transportation to adopt a revised cost participation policy after consultation with local units of government to determine what portions of Local units of government will not be responsible for any trunk highway eligible construction project costs to deliver the project scope the department deems necessary. And they must, the policy may consider a local unit government's ability to pay as a factor in determining the amount of local contribution as any. This report would be due to the legislature before the policy is to be updated. So there is a month by which the report will come back to the legislature before the policy is to be effective with the department. Section 98 is a Senate-only provision that requires the display of certain traffic safety messaging on changeable message signs during inclement weather. Section 99 is a Senate-only provision that modifies the project committee process for certain policy advisory committees that are currently constituted, the Rethinking I-94 project, the Trunk Highway 252 I-94 project in Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center in Minneapolis, and the Trunk Highway 55 Olson Memorial Highway project in the city of Minneapolis, to require further community engagement and community notification processes, as well as a legislative reporting requirement. Section 100 of the Senate bill is the designation of the 10th Avenue Bridge in the city of Minneapolis as the Minnesota Senate Majority Leader Curry Dietzich Memorial Bridge. Section 101 is a Senate-only provision but tied to the electric-assisted bicycle rebate program that requires a retrospective report of the previous attempts to allocate the rebate certificates. Section 102 is an identical provision and is equivalent to the House Section 74. This authorizes rulemaking regarding a loss of consciousness provision for certain drivers who have not had a reoccurrence of their conditions after a certain number of time. Section 75 of the House bill is identical to Senate Section 95, so this is kind of what Matt was talking about of things being slightly out of order. The Senate alphabetized them, so that's where it's, and then when the side-by-side put them together, this is way too long of an explanation. Long story short, an identical explanation, an identical provision about a full service provider in the city of Circle Pines. House Section 76 is a House-only provision that requires a alternative mode analysis for the Blue Line light rail transit extension project to evaluate BRT as an alternative mode of transit in the corridor. Section 77 of the House bill is a House-only provision that relates to high subsidy transit service analysis. Section 78 is a House-only provision that requires a third-party forecasting analysis of metro mobility. Section 103 on R155 of the Senate bill is a two-pronged study for the Department of Transportation to study accessible on-demand rides for transportation network companies. The first study studies a surcharge model where a surcharge is assessed against TNC rides to fund grants for the purchase of wheelchair accessible vehicles by TNC drivers or taxi cab companies. The second prong of the study studies a state-created and operated transportation network company for exclusive use for riders with disabilities to connect riders with vehicles that have wheelchair accessible services and lifts, and so it requires the study of how that would be implemented. Moving on to the side-by-side, Section 104 of the Senate bill is a revisor instruction. Section 105 of the Senate bill, paragraph A, strikes a specific statutory reporting requirement for replacement service providers, which is then picked back up as part of the other changes made in the bill. Paragraph B repeals the DVS Oversight Committee, which was instituted as part of the transition away from MNLARS. And paragraph C repeals a variety of design rules and, as my counterpart mentioned, rules related to the advisory committee that may be formed related to variances pertaining to state aid design standards. So since some portion of those are moved into statute and the facility design guide is purported to be now the sole design standard for state aid projects, that is what the list of repealed rules incorporates. And that is effective July 1, 2025 for new state aid projects on or after that date. And Article 3 on R160 includes just technical and conforming changes related to the degree of manslaughter that is part of the DVS policy bill. And that concludes the walkthrough of the side-by-side and the comparison summary, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much. You may have a sip of water now. Oh, yeah, it's the Senate. Members, do you have any general questions? I probably should have paused after we went over the spreadsheet. If kind of general, we'll get it more into the policy, I think, tomorrow, or any just kind of questions on the policy stuff either. We're all good? Excellent. Any comments or you're good? Then I guess we will move on to try to utilize our time a little bit as efficiently as we can and save more public testimony for tomorrow. But we've got the departments up here. I don't have a particular list, but why don't we start with, is anybody in a particular time frame? Otherwise, we'll start with MnDOT. Please, Commissioner. We'll do MnDOT, Met Council, and DPS. And am I missing anybody else? I think that's it, right? Feels kind of funny to welcome you here in the Senate chamber, but Commissioner, we appreciate the work that you've done in your staff to get us to this point, and appreciate all the future work we're going to do in the next couple remaining weeks. But we welcome you to present testimony and comments on to the committee here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Nancy Daubenberger, and I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on House File 2438, the Omnibus Transportation Bill. I appreciate the work the legislators and staff have done over the course of this session to assemble this legislation. The bill provides important investments to help construct, operate, and maintain Minnesota's transportation system in challenging times. And on behalf of MnDOT, thank you for including several MnDOT initiatives in the House and Senate versions of the Omnibus bill. There are a few items I'd like to highlight. The aims of the project portal requirements in the House version of the bill to enhance transparency and accountability are also goals the department shares. As identified in the fiscal note, this effort would require a significant amount of work and several new staff. MnDOT's program is constantly shifting because of funding changes, project changes, and priority changes like state and federal legislative directives. The department has significant amounts of information available on our website, but we know we can always do a better job of communicating with the public. We are working toward a live statewide transportation improvement program that will make MnDOT's capital program more easily accessible and transparent on our website. Our 10-year capital highway investment plan is already available online with an interactive map to view projects under development. And we have a legislatively mandated project selection website with information about which projects are moving forward, as well as which projects were not selected and why. I look forward to working with the conference committee to ensure that information around transportation projects continues to be transparent, efficient, and accessible. MnDOT shares your commitment to increasing transparency in transportation funding. However, redirecting calculated efficiency savings to corridors of commerce, as proposed in the Senate version of the bill, effectively reduces the existing state road construction program by about $90 million per year. It is also important to consider that about $15 million per year of these efficiencies come from operations and maintenance. So this initiative would indirectly shift funding from operations and maintenance to state road construction. MnDOT looks forward to continued discussions about efficiency savings and how to maximize transparency. The department prefers the House approach on redirecting efficiency savings to corridors of commerce. In addition, MnDOT suggests striking language in Minnesota Statute 161.088, Subdivision 4A, that requires calculating the distribution of funds using the prior two consecutive project selection rounds. MnDOT is working with the Federal Railroad Administration and BNSF Railway on the Northern Lights Express passenger rail project, and we continue to implement the Corridor Identification and Development Grant. We have applied for FRA's Federal State Partnership for Intercity Passenger Rail Grant Program. This would provide the 80% federal funds needed to advance NLX to construction. We anticipate the FRA will announce funding decisions yet this spring. The $8.94 million cut to passenger rail in the House version of the bill limits our ability to support Borealis service from St. Paul to Red Wing, Winona, and points beyond to Milwaukee and Chicago. Ridership on this line has exceeded expectations, and we want to continue to remain strong partners with the states of Wisconsin and Illinois on supporting this service. The proposed 3-year delay in implementation of greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled requirements in the House version of the bill is concerning. Transportation is the leading sector of greenhouse gas emissions in Minnesota, and we need to start thinking differently as we plan expansion projects. The legislation enacted in 2023 creates accountability to directly mitigate or offset increased emissions from highway expansion. Delaying these requirements would remove the most meaningful mechanism for accountability on transportation emissions reduction in Minnesota. It would put responsibility for greenhouse gas reduction on individuals and removes accountability for state and local governments, despite governments being directly responsible for delivering transportation options and making land use decisions. The department has concerns about provisions in the Senate version of the bill related to project development and policy advisory committees. The department has previously provided comprehensive comments in a separate document provided to the committees. And this legislation does not include any adjustments to aircraft registration rates. Along with the modification to airline flight property tax, these investments would allow us to provide more airport development grants for Minnesota's 133 public airports. The Senate made an important adjustment to the effective date for the asset sustainability ratio provision. While this change means we would not have to shift projects within the STIP, we estimate it would require an increase of between about $260 million to $320 million for pavements, or $65 million to $80 million per year on average. During the 4 years of 2031 to 2034, that would result in fewer bridge, freight, safety, and other projects that are currently planned. Meeting the proposed targets in the House bill would result in immediate substantial change to our construction program. Approximately $175 to $240 million annually would need to be shifted to pavement projects to meet these requirements. The 8-year total impact is between $1.4 billion to $1.9 billion. It would require removing non-pavement projects from our program that in some cases have already been scoped and started public engagement. MnDOT does not object to performing the analysis and reporting those results to the legislature, but meeting the targets would have significant impacts to the trunk highway program. MnDOT recognizes the challenges construction projects bring to area businesses and strives to minimize the impact of construction on businesses. At the present time, MnDOT does not have the expertise to assess business impacts of construction projects as proposed in the Senate version of the bill. MnDOT looks forward to continuing conversations about the best location for this type of work within state government. We have developed more detailed feedback and technical input around definitions, pavement structures, exemptions, and other considerations. Again, thank you for allowing me to share this input on the Omnibus Transportation Bill. I look forward to working with you so we can finalize a bill that maximizes the health of people, the environment, and the economy for Minnesota's multimodal transportation system. And I stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't know that we have any questions or anything today, but appreciate your testimony. And members, I think some of you found the letter to her exact comments almost were in your packet, and if not, we can get that to you. And for the public, they were posted, I believe. So thank you very much, Commissioner. Do we want to go to this side of the room, or we'll go to the Chair Zelli, please? He's standing up first. It's kind of... Good to see you, Chair Zelli. For the record, introduce yourself, and thank you for presenting some comments to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Charlie Zelli, Chair of the Metropolitan Council. It's good to be with the committee today. I will make some brief comments, which will be closely aligned with the letter I wrote. Met Council really look forward to working with the committee, especially on aspects relating to funding. But I want to highlight a few items that we think are particularly favorable, and we really appreciate most provisions, both the Senate and the House bills. In both bodies, the authorization for Met Council to have the capacity and authority to loan MnDOT funds from our regional transportation sales tax will help us advance the F-line BRT project in coordination with a state highway project. And we think this would be efficient for both the communities and actually the agencies and taxpayers. Also making fares for Metro Mobility riders permanently free on regular route transit. This would continue a pilot project that has been successful and building popularity and would go into effect once the legislation action takes place. It has been helpful. We believe it is saving money, and it perhaps has the promise of saving additional money out of the Metro Mobility service. We also appreciate a couple of policy priorities that were in the Senate bill, language in SF 2038, which aligns the statutory tools that Met Council uses to procure goods and services from small businesses. These are target business procurement authority that currently all state agencies enjoy, but for some fluky reason, Met Council does not have that, and we think that would really be helpful and would also kind of align us with that standard practice. Also, we appreciate the language in SF 2886, Senator Johnson Stewart's bill, that would would actually change a lot of the required reporting requirements that we do, and kind of reducing redundancies, help make it more efficient, and we ultimately think it make us more transparent by kind of cleaning up that reporting practice. I know there's many others, and I know you also have your valuable time, so I will pause, and we certainly are looking forward to working with the committee in the future and answering questions whenever you like to do that.
Thank you, Chair Zelli. I think we will just continue to move on and reserve our questions for tomorrow and the other time. Deputy Commissioner O'Hearn is the next one to stand up. Deputy Commissioner, welcome. Introduce yourself and then share your comments, please.
I'll do that. Thank you, Chair Kosnick. Good afternoon, and the chairs and everybody on this committee. For the record, my name is Cassandra O'Hearn, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. The Commissioner is unable to be here today, but he did submit a letter, and that should be in your packet. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to provide some comments. We want to express our thanks to Chairs Dibble, Kosnick, Cagle, and everyone on the committee for the hard work in putting this together. And I'm excited that we're able to be here at a conference committee and look forward to continuing to work with all of you and the staff to bring the bill to closure. It's been a hard work, right? You've had to craft these bills in the midst of a really challenging budget outlook, and we really appreciate the investments in public safety that are included. The top priority this session for the department was our operating adjustment. It is critical as it pays employees' salaries, rent, IT costs, and was proposed as a measured request. Without it, we move backwards as an agency. We're hopeful that this committee will adopt the Senate position on the operating adjustment that provides the funding at the governor's recommended levels. Grant administration authority is also vital. We're hopeful that the committee will adopt the House position with respect to grant administration authority for DPS. The ability for the department to utilize up to a set percentage of grant appropriations to administer grants is crucial to ensuring that we have the adequate resources for critical oversight functions to combat fraud, waste, and abuse. For the State Patrol, the investments included in both bills for recruitment and retention of state troopers will maintain a quality workforce that is also reflective of those that they serve. We'd like to see enough funding to allow for 2 academies per year into the future, as recommended by the governor. We're also hopeful that this committee will consider including funding for a new State Patrol headquarters in its final bill. The headquarters is desperately needed to create one centralized space to better serve the public. For driver vehicle services, we thank you for including the no-fee transactions recommended in the governor's budget in both bills. We have always maintained that our deputy registrar partners are critical to serving customers, and they should be paid for the work that they do, and this initiative does exactly that. We would like to see the committee adopt the Senate provision on rulemaking authority for ignition interlock program for DVS. Putting these requirements in rule will serve the public safety by establishing clear and enforceable requirements. We recommend not including the blackout plate revenue shifting currently included in the House bill. DVS collects the vast majority of the funding that enters the HUTD, and we work to support that account, and the best way that we can continue to do that is by providing high-quality, customer-focused service to Minnesotans. We'd also like to see changes to exam appointments for DVS removed from the final version of the bill. On any given day in the past several months, there are thousands of appointments within the next 30 days available across the state for Class D exams, including in the metro area. Making changes to the system at this time will result in less exam availability for our customers and require expensive customization of MinDrive that will have costly impacts to the system in future upgrades. For the Office of Traffic Safety, thank you for including the planning and administrative match to allow the office to fully utilize all available funds and provide long-term stability for the office. We hope to see the inclusion of the requirement to wear a seatbelt in some ATVs when they are driven in the right-of-way in the final report. This requirement will reduce the chance of serious injury and death in crashes. We are also appreciative of the changes included for the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety. This will allow the council to continue to effectively support traffic safety initiatives across the state. Again, I want to thank all of you for the investments in public safety and the work on these bills, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. I'd also like to remind you that you are all invited on Monday to State Patrol Day at the Capitol from 10 to 2. So we hope that we see you out there. Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner, will that vintage motorcycle be there?
I think that's yes.
If you have a valid motorcycle endorsement, are you able to drive it?
I do not.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
I do
That's
not.
pretty awesome.
I do believe that the hope, weather pending, is that the new helicopter may make an appearance as well.
Great, thank you. And for,
We can do arrangements, but maybe not on Monday.
Chair Dibble recognized that the blank colonel was not in agreement on the motorcycle rides. Thank you for your testimony and appreciate your cooperation and working with us.
Thank you.
Do we have others from DVS and traffic safety, or are you, no other testimony there? And I think that's it then. Yeah, so give us the layout for tomorrow, Chair Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tomorrow we will convene again at 2 o'clock, correct? Huh? I'm sorry, excuse me, today was 2 o'clock. Tomorrow's 1 o'clock in this room. Does the room get locked up? So if members want to leave their materials, they're welcome to do so. Oh, never mind, scratch that. Take your stuff with you or have your staff do so. We will take public testimony. Ms. Ethier, do you want to provide some details on how folks can sign up, if they can still sign up?
Yes, signups will be accepted until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you look at the posting, my email address is there. You can also use that email address to submit PDF written testimony of up to 2 pages, and that will be included with member materials and distributed to the public during tomorrow's hearing.
And Mr. Chair, I think we're going to huddle and see if we're going to transact some other business tomorrow. So stay tuned. And Chair Cagle is looking to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if this is our opportunity to ask questions of the department, or if we're going to have another opportunity for that.
I believe we were going to hold that off until possibly tomorrow with after other public testimony. Was that your?
Let me ask the agent, I assume agency, you'll have representatives here that can respond to questions. So is tomorrow soon enough, Chair Cagle? Okay, great.
And then staff suggested to the members the information to put it back in your packet if you want to utilize it later. If you take it with you, then you're on your own to bring it back. Is that pretty good? Okay, with that then, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.